This show may contain adult language and themes. Listener discretion is advised. With that out of the way, let's start the show. You're listening to the Murder Is My Sign podcast, the only true crime astrology podcast, and I'm your host, Jordy Death, here to let your way through the true crime astrology storm. And in the studio with me again is Killer Kyle. That's your new nickname. Until you tell me otherwise.
Let's pick something different for next time.
Okay, well, I will leave you in charge of doing that then, sir. Should we
say something unrelated?
Can we... Okay, quarantine Kyle.
Oh, Christ.
Yes, what do you want to say?
I was going to say TGIF, but now with all the horrible nicknames, you can just F off.
Later. So now we are finishing up the series on the Deadly Duo Hillside Strangler. How exciting!
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So to briefly recap from the last episode, Kenneth, Bianchi, and Angelo Buono went after a friend of the prostitute that sold them the fake list of people whom they thought wanted girls to come out to them because Ken and Angelo were looking to start a prostitution ring and become pimps. Unfortunately for Yolanda Washington, it was that friend, or she was that friend, that was picked up and then subsequently, thank you. Subsequently, words are hard. She was unfortunately subsequently raped and murdered in the back of the car while Angelo was driving on the freeway, only to have her body dumped up in the hills of LA, right in front of some cemetery gates.
Good song.
Very good song. Love Pantera. The cousins quickly developed a method and pattern of who they would target and how they would go about getting their victims and then disposing of them. Both men had fake badges, LAPD and CHP, and then they would use these to target prostitutes, get them into the car, and then handcuff them saying that they were under arrest. The women were then transported back to Angelo's house, where they were then raped and then strangled to death before having their naked bodies dumped somewhere in the hills of Los Angeles.
It's always fun.
Yep, I mean, at this point, they're definitely, developing their pattern, as I'd mentioned, and they're kind of getting it down to a science. Even though Angelo was trying to get creative with some of the deaths of the women by injecting Windex into one woman and then electrocuting another, but neither attempt proved fatal enough to work.
These guys pick up, hobby.
Like a healthy hobby, like trains or rock collecting.
Or, like building erector sets.
What's that?
Erector sets?
Yeah.
It's like an old school, it had little motors, gyros, you could build things out of them.
Like Connect?
Yeah, but actual metal pieces, like not screws, bolts, pieces you could make all kinds of things, wheels, Did you ever see Stand By Me?
No.
Oh, no, not Stand By Me. It's the baseball movie. Killing Me, Smalls.
Well, I haven't seen it.
Sandlot.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, well.
Classic.
There's a classic use of erector set in that movie, actually. But
interesting. But we digress. So, Angelo clearly should have gotten a hobby other than injecting Windex into women. But not too long after murder...
It's almost like a statement you shouldn't have to make out loud.
Yeah. And here I am making it. Crazy. Not too long after murdering their 10th victim, Ken's estranged girlfriend Kelly gave birth to their son Ryan. Ken had smacked up Kelly a few times prior to which prompted her to move out, and when she gave birth to Ryan, she decided to leave California and move up north to Washington State to be closer to her parents.
Smart lady.
Yeah. In May of 1978, Ken drove a junker up to Washington to be closer to Kelly, his bond with his cousin Angelo seeming to have disintegrated. Ken seemed to have mended his ways until the evening of January 11th, 1979.
So how long is this after the last time they killed somebody?
I want to say just a couple of months, okay. I feel.
Because they were going pretty fast pretty hard there for a while.
Right, yeah.
Like, weren't some of them, like, 6 days apart, 5 days apart?
Yeah, and then there was, like, a 2-month break where they didn't kill anyone because Ken's car got repossessed. And I don't know what Angelo was doing. I'm sure he was kind of fucking off somewhere. But yeah, there was a 2-month period where no one was killed.
Well, this is the first time you've ever heard me think of Repo Man before.
Right. That's a really good musical. So yeah, February 16th, 1978 was the death of Cindy Lee Hudspeth. And then... So yeah, it was literally almost a year.
Wow.
Almost a year, I would say. Now...
That they know of.
That they know of, yeah. Now, Ken was up in Washington and he killed these 2 girls. So let's just get into that then. So Ken was now operating on his own, and by doing so made some critical errors that would eventually lead to his capture and arrest. One of the reasons why serial killers can go undetected for so long is that a lot of them tend to target prostitutes or people who tend to go under the radar, so that it will appear as if the killings are completely random. It's as if the victims are chosen at random, like they won the lottery, you could say. 1 in 1,000 prostitutes, 1 in 100,000 12-year-olds, 1 in 50,000 students. Different demographics, totally random, with no crime scene to investigate. Ken and Angelo were able to kill 10 women without so much of a glance from the police.
Yeah.
And let us not forget that Ken wanted to be an LAPD officer, and he even went on civilian ride-alongs with the local police officers.
Have you ever done that?
No, I have not. Have you?
Yes, I've done it.
Oh,
I've
really?
done it 3 or 4 times.
How do you even go about doing that?
You just go down to the police department and request to do it. They have to let you do it. As long as you're not a danger to yourself or others, you're a member of the community, you have the right to see how the police operate within the community.
Really?
No, I'm sure they it's kind of goosed back, like, but I mean, yeah, they take you to crime scenes. I've seen things happen right in front of me.
Shit.
I saw a drunk 17-year-old girl coming from a wedding crash into a parked car on the side of the road because she saw us and swerved and crashed right into a row of parked cars.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
17-year-old and drunk as hell. This is Wisconsin, so that's not a completely unrealistic thing to happen.
Right. Well.
But yeah, I've done it, and I've done it probably 4 or 5 times.
Interesting.
Let's see. Gurnee, Illinois. Lake County Sheriffs. Kenosha County Sheriffs.
Cool.
City of Kenosha, Milwaukee.
Nice.
Racine.
Cool. LAPD by chance?
No.
No? Okay, let's get back to it then.
Wow, you're the one who wanted me to interject more.
Yeah, this is true. I'm just wheeling it back. I love you. So Ken wanted to be an LAPD officer really badly. Went on civilian ride-alongs. Not in Kenosha or Lake Greene County or whatever the fuck you were saying. Sorry.
Oh, I gotta go use the bathroom. Why don't you keep going?
Okay. What caused Ken to get captured was that while he was in Bellingham, Washington, Ken made the mistake of killing 2 popular women, one of them being an acquaintance of his. So, killing people I guess heightens the thrill, because if he can get away with it, then it probably just juices you up even more. Karen Mandick, 22, and Diane Wilder, 27, were the last victims of Kenneth Bianchi, and he was later caught due to a trail of clues that placed him in the company of the 2 women the night they died. Both were strangled just like the other 10 women before them. This was the beginning of the end for Ken. After he was arrested by police, Ken claimed that he had an alter ego named Steve, who was actually responsible for the killings. He states that Steve tied the women up after they arrived at a residence that they were to house sit for. He bound and gagged the women and then proceeded to rape them and then strangle them with a cord. After the women were killed, Ken dragged their bodies out of the basement where he had done the deed and out to Karen Mandick's Mercury Bobcat, where he placed the bodies and then drove to the deserted cul-de-sac nearby. This is where his Whatcom security truck was parked. You know, having gotten legit and actually trying to find a job. Well, and also beginning, like before the murders, he did have a job as a security officer. Ken then drove to the office of his job for a few moments, and then went home to watch some TV with Kelly, and then went to bed. While he was in custody, being questioned, Ken tried pretty hard to convince the detectives and even the psychologists that he had multiple personalities, and that he didn't kill anyone. That was all Steve. 2 psychiatrists were fooled by Ken's display, but the detectives weren't buying it, so they brought in their own expert, who immediately saw through his ruse and contradicted his 2 colleagues. Ken was given a multitude of rigorous tests, which concluded that he was indeed faking multiple personalities. Now, Dr. Orn, the one who knew that Ken was faking, was smart because he knew that it would be essentially his word against that of 2 of his colleagues, who claimed that Kenneth Bianchi did in fact have multiple personalities and would favor them. So as Dr. Orn was packing up, he mentioned to Ken that it was incredibly rare to find someone who had only one personality within his head. It was far more common to find subjects with 3 or more who was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. And Ken, well, he took the bait. A second uninvited personality suddenly appeared that would share the blame for the killings along with Steve. Another independent expert, Dr. Saul Fairstein, shared Dr. Orn's skepticism. So now it's pretty much, they called him on his bluff and Ken dropped the act.
Pretty stupid. Should have just stuck with the one.
Oh,
now in our current time, multiple personality disorder isn't really seen as something that's a legitimate thing. It's sort of a fad for a period of time. It's less and less taken seriously.
I suppose. I don't really know much of it. I just know that's not, the diagnostic is not considered multiple personality. It's dissociative identity disorder. Mm-hmm. So
that's the DSM-5.
Yep, that's the most updated one, right? A sanity hearing was held on October 19th, 1979 in Washington. At the time, it looked like Judge Jack Kurtz would order Kenneth to stand trial and face the death penalty if he lost. So prosecutors in both California and Washington worked on creating a plea bargain that would cover the murder charges in both states. If he accepted the deal, he would plead guilty to some of the crimes and escape the death penalty if he testified against his cousin Angelo. Ken took the deal, and as he sat in court listening to the accounts of rape, torture, and strangulation that he confessed to, he cried. He told the court, "I can't find the words to express the sorrow for what I have done. In no way can I take away the pain I have given to others, and in no way can I expect forgiveness from others."
So horseshit.
Basically, yeah. Absolutely. So he pleaded guilty to Washington state murders of Karen Mandick and Diane Wilder, and was sentenced to 2 life terms in Washington state. After the sentence, he was flown to LA, where he pleaded guilty to 5 of the 10 Hillside Strangler murders, and received a life term for each murder, and an additional term for a conspiracy to commit murder, and an additional time on charges of sodomy. Because he testified against his cousin, he was spared the gas chamber in California. The multiple sentences were merged into 1 life sentence with the possibility of parole in 7 years, and then every 3 years thereafter. This means that Ken would spend up to 35 years in California prisons, and then be moved to Washington's Walla Walla prison for at least 25 more years for his 2 life sentences in that state. Now, Angelo did not go to jail until Ken had made his deal in Washington, because the police had not uncovered enough circumstantial evidence to convict Buono as a Hillside Strangler without Ken's very detailed testimony. Detectives were keeping a 24-hour watch on Angelo, and the moment that Ken agreed to the plea bargain, the cops got word and pounced on him. Which kind of blows my mind that they didn't have enough circumstantial evidence at the time. Once he was in prison, Angelo was assigned to the High Power, which is a super security section reserved for prisoners who are high risk from other inmates. This includes informers or rapists whose victims were young. Angelo was pretty quiet while locked up here, but when he was asked by a fellow inmate why he killed all those girls, he said, "They're no good. They deserve to die. It had to be done. But I only killed a couple of them. I ain't worried. My cousin's gonna do his little nutbag." So basically, he was just counting on his cousin to act like a fucking lunatic and get out of it all. This, of course, was used against him during the trial. Ken tried all... Yeah, surprise.
That's why you don't talk to anybody in high power.
Yeah. Ken tried all the different ways that he could think of to get out of this. He wrote his mother a letter to which he claimed that a confession from the real Bellingham rapist strangler and asked that she send it to the Seattle Times, but she refused and instead told his lawyer about the letter. Ken then tried to get an old girlfriend to be his alibi for the night of the murders, and she originally went with it until she later recanted her statement. And then finally, in 1980, he met his 23-year-old California woman named Veronica Compton and started a love affair with her via mail. Now, Veronica was a budding writer and wanted to be an actress, and she was working on a play about serial killers. She desperately wanted to help Ken, so she thought that if she could pick up a woman at the bar and strangle her, it would prove that the Hillside Strangler was still at large. Veronica failed and was arrested and sentenced to life in prison.
That exact thing it's been a plot point in a lot of TV shows. Like I remember seeing that idea at least twice.
Yeah.
In various shows.
The preliminary hearing on Angelo Buono lasted for 10 months. Ken did his absolute best to muddy everything up by changing his testimony, messing up details, and drawing blanks on time periods. He wanted to remove himself as a reliable witness, and it appeared as if he had succeeded. The district attorney who had originally set the deal with Ken moved to dismiss all 10 murder indictments against Angelo because, with a pathological liar like Ken as a prime witness, the state could not proceed with a successful prosecution. Thankfully, the judge who was proceeding over this was a tough and smart man who had argued cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. Superior Court Judge Ronald M. George ripped into the DA's office for suddenly concluding that they had no case after 22 months of proceedings, where the DA had stated just 2 months prior that the state had, quote, more than sufficient evidence to show presumption of guilt, end quote. So another key thing of this court case is that it went on for years.
Right.
It's noted for being one of the longest in California history. The judge did not focus on Ken's lies and contradictions, but instead on the underlying consistency of the confessions. No matter how Ken tried to muddy up his confessions, he and his cousin were always the protagonists. So Judge George stated, "The court's decision is that our legal system should be permitted to run its normal course by appropriate submission of the issue of guilt or innocence to a jury selected from the community rather than leaving that issue to the disposition of the district attorney. Motion denied."
Oh, that's cute.
It wasn't until the spring of 1982 that a jury of 7 women and 5 men were selected, and these men and women would spend a total of 345 trial days listening to a parade of 392 witnesses spewing forth more than 56,000 pages of testimony.
345 days?
That is...
Trial days?
Yes,
that's 5-day weeks, not including holidays.
Right, that is 2 years in court. Yeah. Like I said, this is one of the longest trials in California.
What do you think happens to your job?
Dude, yeah.
Your taxes. Like, what do you think happens with that shit?
I don't fucking know.
When Christmas rolls around, do you get to go to Christmas?
I don't know.
Damn.
When Ken finally took the stand, he was witness number 200, and it was June of 1982. He remained there as a witness for 54 court days. They warned the jury that Ken was a known liar, but that he had already confessed to the killings on tape, to which they played back the tape. They even took a field trip to the dumping sites where the Stranglers had disposed of the bodies of young Dolores and Sonia. The prosecution continued until they finally rested their case on April 26, 1983. The cross-examination was brutal and carried on for another 6 months, until finally, on October 21st, 1983, the judge charged the jury to reach a verdict. They took 9 days, in which the jury found Angelo guilty of murdering Lauren Wagner. The jury then retired to consider the other 9 victims. 3 days later, they returned with a verdict of innocence in the murder of Yolanda Washington. This was because they... Not guilty, yeah. This was because they concluded that Angelo was only guilty of driving the car. It was Ken who had strangled Yolanda.
He's lucky he's not in Wisconsin. Felony murder rule. Oh, I think California does now as well, but felony murder rule would apply, I would think.
Interesting. Yeah.
Are you familiar?
No.
It's where if you're a participant in a crime, that all the outcomes of that crime you're responsible for as well. Like, let's say you and me go rob a gas station, and when we come in pull our guns, and there's an old lady in there, she has a heart attack and dies. We can both be charged with her murder because we caused the situation that led to her death. Or let's say the guy behind the clerk pulls out a gun and shoots you and kills you. I can be charged with your murder because we precipitated the event which led to your death.
Interesting.
It's called the felony murder rule.
Interesting. I had no idea. Huh.
That's why bank robbers, like, let's say the getaway driver, let's say bank robbers kill somebody. Getaway driver gets the same sentence as the people that were inside the bank.
Sure.
Because it's felony murder.
Yeah, that would make sense, I suppose. For each victim, the jury deliberated. Judy Miller, guilty on Sunday, November 5th. Dolores Cipra and Sonia Johnson, guilty on Monday morning, November 7th. Kimberly Martin, guilty that same afternoon. Christina Weckler, Lisa Caston, Jane Kinn, guilty, and guilty, all on Wednesday, November 9th. And finally, Cindy Hudspeth, guilty on Monday, November 14th. Angelo finally took the stand just 2 days later. He was thinner, and his hair was now gray since he could no longer dye it in prison. He was still the tough guy that he personified, and when asked what punishment he felt he should receive, he muttered, "My morals and my constitutional rights has been broken. I ain't taking any procedure in this trial. I stand mute. I am standing mute to anything further."
That guy doesn't know what his rights, constitutional process, or grammar.
No, he's an idiot. Yeah, for sure. Although the prosecutors called for the death penalty, the jurors perhaps believed that he should not be punished more severely than Ken and settled on life in prison without the possibility of parole. So on January 4th, 1984, Judge George began the sentencing. He started with Bianchi and said that he had lied too much to have fulfilled his side of the plea bargain, and it was ruled that he should be sent to the hardest possible time and was moved to Washington Penitentiary at Walla Walla, where he is currently imprisoned, having been denied parole in 2010. He'll be up again in 2025. Angelo Buono was imprisoned at Calipatria State Prison, and in 1986 married Christine Kazuka, a mother of 3, and a supervisor at the California State Employment Department. California State Development Department. Did I say that right? California State Employment Development Department. Jesus Christ, 3 times. There you go. The judge was not happy that the killers escaped the death penalty and instead got to spend their lives in prison being housed, fed, and clothed at the taxpayers' expense, being cared for more than some of the destitute, law-abiding members of the community.
Yeah, but if they had gotten the death penalty, we would have racked up so much money, and it would have been a wash either way. Yeah,
that's true. Angelo died on September 21st, 2007, at the age of 67 from a heart attack. He was cremated. In 2007, his grandson Christopher Buono killed his grandmother Mary Casillo by shooting her in the head, and then later killed himself. Mary Casillo was at one time married to Angelo and had 5 children. He was unaware of his grandfather's true identity until 2005. So I wonder if he found out who his grandpa was and then just kind of went nutso, or what?
Or maybe he just, mental illness does tend to run biologically in family. Violent disposition.
Yeah.
A lot of it depends on how you're raised. So
Yeah, that's very true.
I'm sure his kids weren't raised the greatest, and they probably passed that along to their kids.
Yeah. But that, my dear friends, is the story of the Hillside Stranglers. Ooh. So now we get to go to the astrology bit, which I know you're just so excited for, Kyle. It's gonna be great. Oh my god. So Kenneth Bianchi was born on May 22nd, 1951 in Rochester, New York. So that means that his sun sign is a Gemini, his moon sign's in Sagittarius, and at the time of his birth, he only had 2 planets in retrograde, Saturn and Neptune. So those don't have like a whole lot of impact on him. How his chart breaks down is he has 6 masculine, 4 feminine, 4 cardinal, 2 fixed, 4 mutable signs, 3 fire, 2 earth, 3 air, and 2 water. So between the signs, as far as the elements go, he's pretty balanced. The cardinal mutable stuff, he's pretty balanced that way. He's more masculine in his signage than feminine, but a lot of astrologers don't really pay a whole lot of attention to that, I suppose. For his birthday of May 26th, it is the birthday of the inventor, according to the encyclopedia. The greatest challenge for those born on this day is avoiding obsessive or controlling behavior. And the way forward is to understand that the more you try to control people or situations, the more they want to break free. And I feel like Kenneth was very much a controlling person. Why else do you want to be a pimp? Really. On the dark side, they are obsessive, touchy, manipulative, and at their best, they're inventive, productive, and tenacious. But typically by the age of 30, these people will have calmed down to learn to be less touchy when their concentration is disturbed. The late 30s and beyond are also the years when they're most likely to decide on what they want to contribute to the world and back it up with action. Well, I'm curious as to what he's contributing to the world from his jail cell, but, maybe he's mellowed out now. We can only hope.
He's adding methane to the environment.
Like cows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But cows are useful.
Yeah. Prisoners, not so much.
They can be, but some of them less than others.
Yeah. Now, with Angelo... Now, remember, Angelo was he was like over 20 years old. He was 20 years older than Ken. So Angelo was born on October 5th, 1934 in Rochester, New York. So this means that his son's a Libra. So Gemini and Libra are both air signs.
Okay.
The third one being Aquarius, which is my sign. Sun sign is like the greater personality. Your moon sign is like your emotional self, like how you deal with your feelings and things like that. So his moon sign was in Virgo, which is an earth sign, so more grounded. Sagittarius, which is Ken's moon sign, that's a fire sign, so a little bit more hot-headed. Angelo only has 2 planets in retrograde, Saturn, which was in Aquarius, and then Uranus, which was in Taurus. Both of those were in retrograde. Now, he has an even split with his masculine and feminine signs. Cardinals 4, fixes 4, mutables 2. Now, he's pretty weak on the fire. He has 1 fire sign, 3 earth signs, 4 air signs, and 2 water signs. So if you have more of one element in your chart and you're lacking in other areas, you could have like more of a fiery personality. Because the fire signs are pretty loud and boisterous, more action oriented. If you have a lot of earth signs in your chart, you can be more grounded, more stable. More air signs would mean that you are very intellectual, very communicative. So basically the traits that the signs are known for go with the elements too. So if you have more of that element in your chart, you're more prone to show those traits.
Okay.
So water signs are more intuitive, more emotional, more in touch with their feelings. So if you have a very watery chart, you're probably more sensitive and probably more in tune with your feelings, or you can easily pick up on the feelings of others.
Okay. And
both these guys were not very watery within their chart. Between them, I would say they're more manipulative with a communicative disease. Because they're both air signs, so they have more air within their chart. Angelo's birthday of October 5th is the birthday of dignified altruism. So greatest challenge for those born on this day is keeping a sense of perspective. The way forward is to understand that getting carried away in your devotion to a cause is counterproductive. Losing your perspective means losing your ability to make an effective contribution. both Ken and Angelo will be drawn towards each other, but the union can be unstable at times, largely because there will inevitably be a division, probably through misunderstanding on romantic levels, which may frustrate the partner. So even though obviously these two weren't romantic together, they did share a lot of the same partners and stuff like that. So I guess there was a little bit of that perhaps between the two. But we did see that as the things progressed, the relationship between these two did dissolve quite rapidly, to the point where Angelo got really fucking fed up with Ken. And even before Ken moved to Washington, he told him to get the fuck out of town. An ideal aspect for the couple, as they will have a lot of interests and projects in common, right? And they will understand each other well.
That's unironically the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
There is a mental rapport that sometimes border on telepathic, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I would say they had some interests in common, and they like to do some projects together, mainly picking up prostitutes and killing them. Yeah. This union is that is particularly based on physical understanding and passionate love. There's a lot of affection between them, and they need to express it physically. So even though these two aren't necessarily fucking each other, they're fucking the same people, and killing people.
I think when you say fuck, there's something that I don't like about that, because they were raping people. It's not the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so when these two people were raping each other, they weren't okay, so what I'm saying, but like, Ken and Angelo were not fucking each other. No, they were raping the same person.
Right, no, I understand that.
Okay.
I got that. Same people.
Their chart basically breaks down to the fact that, like, even though there's, like, a lot of compatibility between the two, they will inevitably drive each other apart with their communication styles being so different. And Gemini is the sign of the twins, and they're the best communicators out of the zodiac. And Libra is the scale, so they like things balanced. So that would make sense, like, overall, why they would be very compatible is because they can communicate, they can be balanced, they can, find the equilibrium between the two. But I think in the end, what it boils down to is a huge age gap between the two, with Angelo being 20 years older than Ken, and Ken kind of being rootless or whatever. And just looking up to the wrong idols. And Angelo just being a fucking piece of shit to begin with. So, sextile Jupiter and the lunar node, they are made for each other. They go well together. They have intellectual understanding and confidence in each other. A harmonious couple. So, yeah, like I said, overall, it was a very compatible charting between the two. But I think when you go into, like, this kind of relationship, whether or not you're family or related in that regard, when you start hurting people and killing people, it just adds a whole different layer, different flavor of stress that inevitably will break down.
I would say that's probably, you'd hope that this type of situation couldn't last regardless of the reasons, right? At least you'd hope so.
Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, I think that's basically that's it for the series. I got nothing more to say on these two. Any last thoughts, feelings, or comments?
I don't wish ill of anybody, but if I woke up tomorrow and read in the paper he's dead, I'd be alright with that.
Right. Yeah. I'm just very curious because, like, in the article I was reading, they said that Walla Walla was, like, the harder of the two prisons. I'm just curious as to why that is. But I don't know. So... And he's still at Walla Walla, according to the Wikipedia page that they have on him. So, anywho.
May he never see another sunrise.
True that. May he get COVID-19 and shit his pants, even though those two things do not go hand in hand.
Well, definitely not the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah. On that note, thank you guys so much for listening to Murder is My Sign podcast. Please be sure to share this podcast with anyone that you can, any way that you can. You can find Murder is My Sign anywhere you download your favorite podcasts, including your favorite podcasting app. You can also follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Jordy Death. That's Jordy Death, or you can email the show directly at murderismysignpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to go above and beyond, you can always become a Boneyard backer and join the Boneyard at patreon.com/murderismysign, just like my awesome patrons, Jake, Michelle, Holly, and Crystal. other than that, guys, thank you so much for all your, love and support. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves. Please, stay inside. Just, if you don't have to go out, don't go out during this time. And just also wash your hands and sanitize everything. I really hope you all are just taking really good care of yourselves. Thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next time when we begin the April topic. And yeah, if you like this dialogue with Kyle and I kind of talking back and forth, please let me know. Or if you want me to just go back to myself, just reading my scripts, let me know. Any feedback's always appreciated and welcome. Other than that, also, if you guys want to check out another podcast, I definitely want to recommend my good friend Lucas Tietzen. He has a podcast out called Blues News Media, and I'll be sure to leave a link in the description box below. He is doing like hot takes on current events and things like that, and he's kind of like an indie news reporter in the sense where he's kind of into like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, but he's going to make you think, and he's going to challenge you to think outside the box and to do your own research. And I've been listening to a lot of his podcasts over the last couple of days, especially at work, since we've been closed to the public for the last week or so. So other than that, just make sure you guys are taking care of yourself and each other, and until next time, rest in peace.
Every time you say that, I think of The Undertaker.